Hello, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Are you ready to get off this fucking mountain today?
Oh, I'm excited. I know you're done. You had to sit through all the research and other
Oh my
bullshit.
god. I came out to a total of 88 references for this whole thing.
That's insane.
Yeah. So I'm a little over being on Mount Everest, to be perfectly honest. So, updates of why this was not out last week is because people were in the process of moving down. I've currently got the whole family over here now. And then this last week, I have been battling a stomach bug. So hopefully, it doesn't rear its ugly head during this episode, and we can just cruise on by and not have a problem.
I picture the waiting screen with something corny on it. It's like, we'll be right back.
Mm-hmm. While I go empty whatever stomach contents are left.
Oh no. That's not fun.
Ugh.
Do you know what it is, or is it just
I think it was
icky
stomach
tummy?
flu. I really think it was just
Oh,
stomach
that's
flu.
good.
But now it's like it's
Oh.
starting to move out, and I'm on that like receiving end of like my stomach still doesn't feel 100%, and I'm like I just kind of want to sleep, to be perfectly honest.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what's been going on my side of things. What are you up to, Sarah?
Have I been up to anything? That is the real question.
That is the real question. Have you been causing trouble? You haven't gotten arrested lately, right?
No, I'm still out of the drunk tank. Me and my friends did a fun Halloween bar crawl.
Ooh, that does sound like fun.
It was great. We had a lot of fun at the second bar we went to. It was a barcade, but it had a lot of like, I don't know, older video games and like a ton of pinball.
Was it in Old Town Fort Collins, like
Yeah.
Rocket?
No, not Fort Collins. It's off of 4th Street in Loveland.
Oh, because the Barcadium I
Yeah.
think of is the one over in Fort Collins that's like down below the street. I think it's
That
like
would be a cool one to go to.
Reggie Rockets or something like that. I haven't been there in years, so I don't remember.
We all just call this one the barcade.
The
It has a
barcade.
name, but we don't know it.
That's
I
fair.
think what was it? I was playing the claw machine and I won a frog, a stuffed frog, and then a shit ton of rubber ducks that squeak when you squish them.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just handing those out to people all night.
You're just like, here, have a rubber duck. Goodbye.
Like, here's a ducky.
Some person's like, some random chick just gave me a duck. What is
I
this
had so
about?
many. Oh my, I literally, I was like, I think I had 3 drinks and a shot at that point. So I was just going to the quarter machine. I was getting quarters because the rubber duck machine would only take quarters. And
Oh
I'd go over
God.
that, I'd put 2 in, and I'd go, ducky, ducky, ducky. And I'm sure people are like, what is up with this girl? And then, like, the claw would go down, and I'd come up with 1 or 2 at a time. And I'm really good at the claw machines.
Mm-hmm. As a heads up for people, if you're hearing some tinkly tinks in my background noise, I think the rain just started for us. So we're going to switch into podcasting mode before it gets really bad because we're expected to have thunderstorms this evening and into tomorrow.
Yay.
So
If it makes you feel better, I don't hear anything.
that's good. That's good. Because I'm like, I just heard like the tinkles on the top of the like tin roof. I'm like, uh oh. I'm like, please stay quiet for me. I don't want to have to edit that out. I don't know how to edit that out. Please no.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean bar crawls sound like fun and everything. So I really hope in the next year I get to do some of that because it's not happening this year. Anyways, before we get started, while we understand that some individuals listen for the entertainment aspect of true crime, it's important to remember that these are real people with families and friends who may still be suffering from their loss. These stories are not meant to open old wounds or cause further emotional damage to those involved. We remind you, please be respectful and do not dox or contact those involved with the cases. The topic discussed on this podcast today may be disturbing to some audience members, and listener discretion is advised. We are still on Mount Everest, people, so I don't think there's any trigger warnings other than it's just heartbreaking with this story, with what's happening. So I was voluntold that we needed to go back and do the 1996 incident for a wrap up of this season. But before we can do that, I have an update on one of the bodies that we've already discussed. And obviously, there's an investigation still underway. According to the Smithsonian Magazine, last month, below the north face of Mount Everest, a documentary team from National Geographic made a discovery that has revived a long-standing question of who may have made it to Everest Peak first. This team with National Geographic went up the mountain, moving along the Rungbuk Glacier, where it's common to come upon things that like climbers have left in the past, like a tin can, a graft of clothing, maybe an old ski pole. But this time, they found an oxygen bottle stamped with the date of 1933, which was a year another failed British expedition took place, particularly one that had found the ice axe belonging to that of Andrew Irving. So, the mood in this group begins to shift a little, and they start cracking jokes saying, oh, we're going to find Irving, and we're going to find his camera. So they decide to return a week later to look around like a little bit more just in case there's anything else in this area. And protruding from the ice of the melting Rungbuk Glacier was a leathery old boot. And inside that, they discovered the frozen foot and a sock. According to Jimmy Chin, a climber and filmmaker, I lifted up the sock and there's a red label that has A.C-Irvine stitched into it.
They found him!
They found him, at least a part of him. So now,
close enough, I think.
This team quickly realizes the significance, and they're running in circles like chickens with their heads chopped off, dropping F-bombs, because this very well could be Andrew Irving. Now, it can't be said 100%, as a DNA test has yet to come out regarding the certainty that this is indeed Andrew's boot. However, according to Mark Fisher, the nameplate is perfectly stitched on there and it's perfectly legible. Not to mention, it's an exact match to George Mallory's own boots that were found with his body. There's no estimated time for how long DNA testing could take, but the team believes the boot likely had thawed out of the frozen glacier no more than a week before they discovered it, due to its state of preservation.
Wow. So,
being at the right place at the right time.
Talk about getting really, really lucky.
Mm-hmm. So at first they decided that they were going to leave it where it laid, because that's custom on Everest. But they're beginning to become worried about other elements possibly damaging it further. And they're now working with the authorities to transfer the boot back to Andrew's remaining family members. Now, while this doesn't exactly solve the century-old mystery, it does open new avenues for future breakthroughs, just like the discovery of Mallory's body 25 years ago. If you remember, George Mallory's body had been found still connected to a climbing rope in 1999. And the assumption is that at the other end of the rope, there may have been Andrew tied to it. Now, the assumption that they had both slipped and fallen from the nearby summit feels a little bit more accurate. Andrew's boot feels like another piece to the puzzle for many individuals chasing and trying to solve this mystery. Julie Summers, Andrew's great niece, told National Geographic that this discovery refutes the theory that Chinese climbers found the explorers first and moved Andrew's body, because he is technically in that realm of where he should be. Julie had lived with the story of her great uncle Sandy for years. She suspects that the remains were probably caught in an avalanche that trapped it underneath the glacier, and she's regarding this as something as close to closure that she could possibly have for Andrew. Some have suggested that if the camera were to be found, it may contain evidence of the men reaching the summit first. However, Julie makes mention that even if the camera is recovered, it may not provide definitive answers if they did or not, because obviously you have to take into consideration that this camera is over 100 years old. The film may be deteriorated because of the elements, so you might not even have a clear picture. And the film also might be destroyed if it's moving downhill in an avalanche with Andrew and God knows what other debris. However, some questions have risen with the discovery of Andrew's boot. Did he fall off the mountain? Secondarily, how did he become dismembered? And did it happen prior to death or post-mortem?
I'd guess post-mortem.
I would guess post-mortem too.
One question.
But that is a question.
That's a question. Oh my god. He's like, I'm just gonna cut my leg off. It's fine.
That could have very well been what happened. He was like, okay, this foot's stuck. I can't fucking move with it. It's got to come off.
Oh. What's the movie about the rock climber? I can never remember because there's a number in it.
420, I think. Where he gets caught in like the Grand Canyon for like that many days because his hand's stuck. He actually had to like chop off his hand or something like that. I'm like, I wouldn't have it in me. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm not a coyote.
No. I'm like, props to people that can do that. Like, you guys are badasses. I could fucking never. I know myself too well. I'd be like, okay, we can do this. I get myself psyched up and I go to do it. I'd be like, I can't do this.
You have to do it with a pocket knife.
Yeah, no.
So if someone's on Mount Everest having to do the exact same thing through winter gear, God, I think I'd cut through like the coats, like the outer layer, and I'd be like, you know what?
You know
Give me enough time to think. It's getting kind of cold. I think I'll take a nap.
We'll be okay.
Oh my god. Or it could have gotten ripped off like,
in the avalanche too.
Fall.
Because it sounds like
which would suck.
Yeah, it sounds like it came out from underneath the glacier. So in my presumption with like the current of possibly an avalanche or going into a serac or a crevasse, it's like that crushing motion, because this happens with floods all the time, of just that crushing motion and like scattering of a human body, because most victims that are in a floodplain or in flood territory are not fully whole anymore.
I'm glad that you're the brains of this operation.
I am the brains of this operation usually. So
yeah, that would be my guess. Just he's a frozen body.
Yeah. I mean, elements are going to deteriorate things. And then I'm not sure what the animal activity looks like on Mount Everest, but you could also go by animal scavenging too. They're pulling apart pieces of the body.
It was a Yeti.
Just poor Andrew.
The Mount Everest Yeti.
All right. So with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and transfer into today's topic, which is the 1996 Mount Everest disaster. I will be covering as many people as I can, or at least giving a brief tap on those stories that may not be as long as others. Additionally, I do highly recommend that you check out Into Thin Air, the book for this, because it gives a little bit more of like accountable detail of what went on that day. Mine is going to be a brief synopsis of kind of what happened that day. So the 1996 Everest disaster occurred on May 10th to the 11th, when 8 climbers were caught in a blizzard and died on Mount Everest. In total, 12 people died attempting to reach Everest summit that season. This was the 3rd worst incident to happen on Everest slopes, and it saw a loss of mass life, which the second to this would be an avalanche that took 16 casualties in 2014. And then the first is the 2015 Nepal earthquake that occurred in April and saw a total of 23 fatalities from resulting avalanches. So there are 4, possibly 5 teams, from what I could decipher, attempting to reach the summit on May 10th of 1996. On the South Col, there are about, I think, 3 groups attempting to reach the summit, and this consists of the Adventure Consultants, which was led by Rob Hall. It consisted of 19 people, including 8 clients. Mountain Madness, which was led by Scott Fisher, which also consisted of 19 people and 8 clients. Then the last group on the South Ridge is that of a Taiwanese expedition, which is comprised of 5 members. Then we got to go over to the north side. So on the north side is the Indo-Tibetan Border Police Expedition Team, attempting to reach the summit with what consisted of 6 members according to some articles. However, those numbers differentiate depending on which source you go with. So in total, there are about 4 expeditions attempting to reach the summit of Everest on May 10th. Now, the trek to reach the summit was intended to be concluded by 2 p.m. local time, which is considered to be the cutoff time for climbers to safely turn around and return to base camp. But delays in the climb and the increase of harsher weather slowed the ascent and resulted in some expeditions being stuck on the mountain as the blizzard intensified. And some climbers didn't even reach the peak of the mountain until well after 5 p.m. local time. The first of the delays was the incoming blizzard that started to bear down on the mountain during the expedition. It brought more snow than any of the respective parties had planned for, which trapped them close to the summit as the snow settled. This buried fixed ropes that led back down the mountain on the established pathway. This also reduced the clear path back through the raging storms. Furthermore, the guides had failed to set up fixed ropes, and the health of some of the climbers caused delays, which led to expeditions being caught in the full brunt of the blizzard.
This just sounds like one bad thing after another after another, and it just keeps going. Like, these guys who have gone up a million times, they're like, we'll be fine, and then all of a sudden it's 5 p.m. and they're like, oh shit, so we gotta get all these people back down.
No, it was really a shit show, just bad thing after another, like just one step, back step.
Yeah, well, it's not like they can not go back down. They have no other option.
Yeah. So additionally, there was a lack of oxygen canisters, which impacted the health of climbers as they tried to descend. Due to health deteriorations of many of the climbers, they were forced to be left behind, as rescue would be impossible. Now, Beck Weathers is a survivor of the 1986 Everest disaster, and he wrote the book Left for Dead, My Journey Home from Everest, and recounts in detail and firsthand experience what that day was like. So, the final push for the summit began on May 9th with the Loti face, and it's described how the face is slick with no coefficient of friction, meaning you're traction free in the zone. Your chances of arresting an uncontrolled slide are 0 to none, which one of the members of the Taiwanese team discovered the truth of this the morning of May 9th. So Chen Yuan, and I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that, was the first death during this expedition. Chen Yuan, as he walked out of his tent that morning, forgot to put on his crampons, and he was still wearing his inner boots. He took a couple steps, and then with a whoosh, went sliding down into a crevasse, leading to his death.
No. Oh, that poor man. Oh my god. I feel so bad. That's such a normal, unassuming thing to just do. Yeah, just no thoughts. Just like, oh, I'm just gonna stretch. Like, I can't be in this tent anymore, and you just get out and then whoosh.
Yep.
Oh,
and he was
I feel bad.
Gone. So, following this, the plan was fairly simple. They were going to get up with the sun and climb all day to the high camp on the South Col, hoping to arrive late that afternoon. From there, the group would rest for 3 to 4 hours before getting up again and climbing all night to reach Everest summit by noon on May 10th, with absolutely no one summiting later than 2 p.m., which this had been drilled into everyone's head the week prior to attempting the summit, that absolutely no one goes up later than 2 p.m. Beck recalls being told, if you're not moving fast enough to get to the summit by 2, you're not moving fast enough to get back down before darkness traps you on the mountain. As planned, the group reached the higher camp late that afternoon. However, there were 4 groups too many people, and they had to bivouac in this area of the South Col in preparation of their final push. So Scott Fisher's expedition team, a Taiwanese group, and a team of South Africans, which they actually would not attempt the summit that night, were all located in this area. And there's about a dozen tents set up around this area. So it's pretty jam-packed with people getting ready to do the summit attempt the following morning. Now, in this area, it's common to see littered oxygen canisters, the occasional frozen body still in the areas from previous climbers, along with deteriorated tents. Now, the wind is blowing hard when they get up to high camp, and Beck recalls how he secretly was grateful that the team couldn't climb in these conditions, as he was pretty hammered himself, to which he said, "If you rest tonight, you're bound to feel better tomorrow than you do right now." So he's telling himself that as he's going to bed. So they all turn in for the night, and they're all tucked into their tents in their sleeping bags, listening to the wind howl until around 10 p.m. when it finally relents and the frigid cold starts to calm over the death zone. Now, when they get ready to push for the summit after their short rest, Beck mentions that he's worried for 2 members in their group. The first one being Doug Hansen, as he'd been sick and wasn't climbing well, and looked like he'd been worked over heavily with an ice axe. Now, Doug originally tried to climb Everest in 1995 as part of the Adventure Consultants trip led by Rob Hall. However, due to the severe weather, along with frostbite, Doug was forced to turn back barely 300 meters from the peak. Doug was unable to consider a second try since the charge to climb Everest under Rob's guidance was roughly $65,000 a person. However, because Rob liked Doug, he offered a significant discount in the fees to try to climb again the following year in 1986. With being turned around the year before and coming so close to the top, Beck Weathers said that Doug came back vowing that under no circumstances that he was going to be turned around again. So he's dedicated to making it to the top. In addition to this, Doug had been having breathing problems during acclimation, and according to John Cracker, and I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that one, a fellow climber on the expedition, he actually had to rouse Doug from his sleeping bag 2 weeks prior to the final ascent on April 26th because Doug wouldn't wake up. Now, Doug voices worries about his throat and reservations about his ability to climb. And Doug had actually had a small throat surgery before departing to Nepal. Additionally, he noticed frostbite sprouting from the remnants of his toes that he'd previously lost on his 1995 ascent that same day.
What?
Yeah, like he's already lost limbs to frostbite and stuff,
You're
and
already
like it's starting to sprout
casually-
back. I'm just like
casually dropping.
No. No.
You're casually dropping the missing toes. Oh, this poor man.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god.
So Doug advised Rob before their final ascent attempt that he might not be able to ascend Everest because he was uncomfortable and it was getting hard for him to communicate because of that throat surgery. Now, Rob urged Doug to keep going, and Doug, despite his reservations, was hesitant to abandon the climb as he'd put a significant amount of effort into it, money, and time. So he decided he's going to continue. On the last day of the trip, Doug told his teammates that he hadn't eaten or slept well in several days, and ultimately, he just wanted to drop. However, he chose to continue the ascent after a quick talk with Rob.
God.
Beck recalls, like,
Oh,
a great majority of climbers, he's feeling like he's just in competition with himself and nobody else. Like, that's kind of how you should go, is just set your goals. You either meet them or you don't, but you're in competition with yourself and no one else. So he set his personal goal of making it as far as the South Col into that like death zone area, and he'd accomplished
okay.
that. So before leaving his home in Dallas, Texas, he stated that he simply wanted to experience Everest and all it had to offer, which in hindsight, he confessed, I'd probably rephrase that statement today. The other person Beck was currently concerned for was Yasuko Namba, who he described as a itty bitty person that couldn't have weighed more than 90 pounds dripping wet. Beck recalls how the gear she had to carry weighed the same as everyone else's, and he didn't think the teeny body of hers could cash the checks that Yasuko's mind was writing. Now, as they're getting ready to leave their tents, they're putting on their oxygen masks and enormous down suits like the ones your mom would have thrown you in when you were a kid going out to play in the snow. You know, the ones like if you fall over, you're staying there. I just had the
Layer
mental,
after layer.
yeah, layer after layer. I just had the mental image of Christmas Story with Ralphie not being able to get up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I
It
remember
goes
being bundled up
underwear.
like that.
What is it? Your long johns, your regular clothes, your under layer, your wet layer, and then your layer that goes above that for
Mm-hmm.
some reason.
And then your nice
You're only 5 layers.
windbreaker. And then you're like
And
walking
don't,
out like a
yeah.
scarecrow down to the bus stop.
Oh my God. I used to get bullied in school for wearing my winter coat.
I'm like, it was
And
like a
then one day the
mission to
heat
put my
went
shit
out.
off. Oh, yeah.
God. Yeah, the heat went out one day, and I was all of a sudden people are like, "Oh God, it's so cold in here." I was like, "Huh, coat."
Coat. I
I was like,
remember
"Well,
there was one snowstorm that came in when I was like in elementary school. And because I was on the swim team, I'm like, I just wore my fucking parka. I was like, I am wearing this today. It is too cold for
no."
anything else. And people started making fun of me. And then when recess hit, all of them were like, oh, it's really cold out here. And I'm like, I'm sitting like a little igloo over in the corner, like, this is comfy.
You're all just toasty. You're like, "Well,
Well,
my, how the
then,
tables have turned."
my, the turntables have turned. So, like I said, you can't do much but more than like waddle when you're in this kind of like down enormous suit. So, the Adventure Consultants team got started first with the push to the summit, with Mountain Madness and the Taiwanese team about an hour behind them. Outside of their headlamps, there is no artificial light or natural light sources anywhere, which gives you a beautiful view of the stars in the pitch black surroundings. Now, the pace is slow, rhythmic, and it's like a metronome like gait. And with each step, the metal gear of your boots and the bindings of your pack squeak in response because it's just too fucking cold for it. Now, they moved across the South Col heading for the summit. As Beck is starting to come up the summit point, he's becoming more aware that something is happening to him. Beck's nearsighted and has struggled for years with various mountains with iced over lenses, which I can speak from experience of having a contact lens freeze in your eye. It's not pleasant.
Oh, ugh.
It's
Just
not
bring
pleasant.
glasses.
Oh, yeah.
You're already paying a lot for the trip.
Well,
Just
you gotta
bring more
think
glasses.
at that temperature, it's so cold and that heat coming off your face, it's gonna fog your glasses.
Don't be blind. It's bad for your eyes.
Don't be blind, it's bad for your health. As I
Bad for
sit
your health
here
on Mount
literally going
Everest.
blind.
Oh, girl, me too.
So Beck worked with all sorts of gadgets to help keep his vision clear, but nothing worked. So prior to this expedition on Mount Everest, he had his eyes operated on so that he could be safer going up mountains. He He had a radial keratotomy operation, which sees tiny incisions being made into one's cornea to alter the eye's focal length and ultimately improve vision. However, unknown to him or his ophthalmologist, the high altitude will alter a cornea, both flattening and thickening it, as well as shortening your focal length and rendering you effectively blind.
That sounds about right. Hot and cold, they change your eyeball.
They really do. And
It should have
unfortunately,
been somewhere warm.
this is what's starting to happen to Beck about 1,500 feet
No.
above the camp early on the morning of May 10th.
Oh God, that poor man. So did he survive or did he die?
We're getting there. We're getting there. Hold your
Okay,
horses.
okay. Holy shit. He'd have to have some really good friends, I'd think, to get him back down. I'm
So
rooting for him.
Beck is now feeling more inconvenienced at this point rather than handicapped by the problem. So he doesn't mention it to anyone. And he didn't panic when it started to shift and reoccurred in the dark at about 27,500 feet. Since
20. Oh,
he knew
that's pretty high up.
that's pretty high up to be having vision problems, I'd be shitting a brick.
You're
I'm not
going to
even gonna
jail,
lie.
Beck. You're going to ice jail.
Going to ice jail.
You better tell your peoples
So
about your eye problems.
since he knew he had more difficulty seeing at night, he knew the solution would be coming to him in the next couple of hours, daylight. However, in the pre-dawn darkness, he was too blind to climb. So he stepped out of line and let everyone pass, going from fourth in line to dead last. As expected, his vision began to clear as daylight rose, and he was able to dig in the front parts of his crampons and head up to the summit ridge. Then he reached to wipe his face with his ice-crusted glove, and one of the crystals painfully lacerated the right cornea, leaving the eye completely blurred.
No, you need both your eyes for climbing Mount Everest. Otherwise, you have no depth perception.
In reference to people that
Oh.
we don't have video up yet, but poor Sarah's over here just cringing. She's like, no.
That is the ultimate nightmare, I think. In the fact that, okay, so I read an article on some terrible website that gave my phone so many ads. I'm going to use the word ads. Pedro Pascal asks his friends to hold his hand when he's feeling anxious. This man couldn't ask someone to hold his hand while he was blind.
Oh my God.
This is so much worse.
So this means that Beck's got absolutely no depth perception. And that's obviously not good for this environment. Beck's left eye as well is starting to get a little blurry, but is still doing relatively okay. However, he knew he couldn't climb above the balcony at this point. So he's basically stuck here until his vision improves. Still believing that he could accomplish the summit, though, he told Rob, "You guys go ahead and boogie up the hill. At a point that I can see, I'll just wander up after you." At around 7:30 a.m., Rob came back and said, "Beck, I don't like that idea. You've got 30 minutes. If you can see in 30 minutes, climb on. If you cannot see in 30 minutes, I don't want you climbing." So Beck is hesitant about this, but ultimately he agrees. Although it's not a willing or happy answer. He recognizes the common sense of Rob, and Beck says, if I can't see in that 30-minute window you've given me, as soon as I can see, I'm just going to head back down to high camp. To which Rob tells him, "I don't like that idea any better than your last one. If I come down off the top of this thing and you're not standing here, I'm not going to have any idea whether or not you've gone down to the safety of hide camp or if you've gone for a 8,000-foot whipper. I want you to promise me. I'm serious about this. I want you to promise me you're going to stay here until I get back." To which Beck responds with, "Rob, cross my heart and hope to die. I'm sticking."
Is he lying?
No, he's going to wait for Rob.
Okay.
So
Okay, good.
now we know about the blizzard coming in and everything. So, in order to escape the incoming terrible weather conditions and low sights, Rob set the 2 p.m. deadline for his customers to reach the summit. However, delays, congestion, and other factors at the base of the Hillary Step, including the expedition's Sherpa's inability to fix ropes in a timely manner, only a few climbers made it to the summit by 2 p.m. 3 members around noon decided to turn back and descended towards Beck. Stuart Hutchinson, Lou Kaziski, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that, John Task, and Frank Fishbeck turned back earlier due to the slowdown at the Hillary Step. They knew that there was no way they were going to make it to the summit by 2 p.m. So in this realization, they're going to start their descent to safety. The group, as they passed Beck, said, "Come on down with us." To which Beck is kind of sitting there and he goes, "I've really put myself into a box here. I promised Hall I will stay put, but we have no radio. So I have no way to tell him that I'm leaving. It would be as if I never honored the commitment that I made to him at all. I just don't think I can do that now." So they say their goodbyes and continue down the mountain. And Beck recalls how at this time he should have probably gone with them, but he didn't, seeing as the sense was to wait for Rob and there was no immediate danger or immediate threat. It was still a perfect day. Now, climbing without supplemental oxygen, one of the guides of Mountain Madness, Anatoly Burkev, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that, was the first to reach the summit at 1:03 p.m. However, due to those delays, many climbers didn't reach the summit at 2 p.m. as planned. And Rob decided that he would extend the deadline after learning that his opponents from Mountain Madness had successfully summited and his clientele was still working their way. He extended that deadline from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. And Rob and his clients reached the summit shortly thereafter. Scott Fisher from Mountain Madness did not make it to the summit until 3:45 p.m.
That's pretty late.
Yeah. And he was exhausted from the ascent,
Oh, I bet.
in addition to becoming increasingly ill.
Oh no. Oh my god.
So Scott stayed at the summit for roughly 15 to 20 minutes before beginning his descent. At this time, it was believed that Scott may have been possibly suffering from HAP, which is high altitude pulmonary edema, and it is a life-threatening form of non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema that occurs in otherwise healthy individuals above altitudes of 2,500 meters.
Is that in your heart?
That's your heart.
Okay.
So it's
I just
basically
wanna make
giving
sure. I
you
thought so.
a heart attack in sorts, like it's flooding of the heart wall.
No. This poor man.
Scott may have also been suffering from HACE, which is high altitude cerebral edema. And it is a medical condition in which the brain swells with fluid because of the physiological effects of traveling into a high altitude. So Scott isn't doing well.
Oh, that poor man.
On the way back down, Sherpa Agni Dorhe encountered Doug Hansen just above the Hillary Step and ordered him to descend. However, Doug shook his head no and pointed upwards towards the summit. When Rob arrived on the scene, the Sherpas eventually offered to take Doug up to the summit, but Rob instructed them to go ahead and go back down and assist with other clients, instructing them to stash some oxygen canisters along the route for their descent. Rob said he'd remain to help Doug, who had, at this point, ran out of supplemental oxygen. So Doug and Rob reached the top of the summit. However, with their late summit, they were caught in the severe storm with high winds and sub-zero temperatures that hit the mountain around 5:30 p.m. Climbers descending the area were reduced to zero visibility, with one climber stating it was like being lost in a bottle of milk, with white snow falling in almost an opaque sheet in every direction.
God. Sometimes I like to take drives when there's a blizzard. I can't imagine having to hike miles in that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nightmare.
And mind
It's
you,
bad enough when I'm in my car.
this is an Everest blizzard, and when we say whiteout, like, yeah, it's fucking white outside when it's like whiteout conditions in Colorado, but not like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is
Oh, I bet
probably
it's
the
worse.
worst of the worst that you could get.
Like 2022 when we got 2 feet of snow. Worst, probably.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that happens every day up there or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's on a bi-weekly schedule. It tells the Sherpas beforehand.
So Mike Groom, Rob's fellow team leader and guide, took Beck with him as he attempted to descend from the mountain to Camp 4. During this attempt, the team huddled together and almost walked off the side of the mountain as they were looking for their tents.
Did they die?
In this process, Beck lost a glove and immediately began feeling the effects of high altitude in the freezing temperatures against bare skin.
No! God, he's already missing toes. Is he the one who's missing toes?
No, Doug's missing toes. Doug's up on the mountain still. Beck is
Oh God, Doug's still
our
up there.
warrior that was
Beck's gonna
blind
be-
on the mountain.
Beck's just missing fingers now. It's fine.
So Mike recalls the group was huddling together to conserve heat when Beck randomly stood up in the wind, held his arms above his head, the right hand frozen beyond recognition, and began screaming that he had it all figured out before a gust of wind blew him backwards into the snow. Following this, Mike stated that Yasuko had attempted to put her oxygen mask on with persistence, even though at this point she was completely out of supplemental oxygen.
No.
She too collapsed into the snow. The guides concluded in this little group that it was useless and unsafe to move the group towards the camp, so they instead waited for a break in the storm. So they're bivouacking down to hold out for this.
God, these guides are saints on like a different level.
Mm-hmm. So back up at the top of the mountain, Rob and Doug are descending to base camp after a brief stay at Everest summit. They had depleted their supplemental oxygen at this point, and Doug is physically and psychologically exhausted. Rob tries to persuade Doug to keep crawling, but unfortunately, Doug is already past the point of exhaustion and hypothermic. So he's becoming that more ragdollish individual of I can't really move by myself.
Doug, no.
Rob radioed for help shortly after, saying that Doug had fallen unconscious but was still alive. And the adventure consultant's guide that was working with him and Mike, Andy Harris, began climbing to the Hillary Step around 5:30 p.m. with supplemental oxygen and water in hopes of saving the two men. Rob was unable to leave his client alone or assist him in descending from the Hillary Step, but by 6 p.m., Rob was forced to descend alone to the south summit.
That would be devastating. Be like, hey man, like imagine just like it's like a whiteout. And then the Sherpa just appears out of nowhere. He's like, hey, it's just you, come down. And he's just like, what do you mean? My friend's here. And he's like, no, just come down.
Yeah.
And he's the only one. He's like, what the fuck? And so he follows the guy, and all his friends are still up there. I would be traumatized beyond anything. I'd fall asleep. I wouldn't fall asleep, actually. I think I'd be jerked out of sleep by thoughts like this.
Mm-hmm. No, it's fucking chaotic on this day. So
that's so...
Moving back over to Scott, the guide for Mountain Madness team, as well as a Taiwanese member, Gao Mingho, who is also known in some articles, and I'm so sorry if I mispronounce this, Makalu Gao, were stuck in this weather just below the balcony and they couldn't go any further. So Scott is also very noticeably exhausted at this point, likely from a combination of overexertion and altitude sickness setting in, with an onset of hypothermia. His condition is deteriorating rapidly. By that evening, Scott was struggling significantly, and Lopsang Jangbu, who was Mountain Madness's head Sherpa and friend of Scott, is trying to help him down the mountain as best as he can, but eventually Scott collapses and is no longer able to walk. Nearby, Taiwanese climber Gao is also bivouacked down for the evening, waiting for rescue. When the last of the 3 headlamps burnt out in Gao's group, his 2 Sherpas were left in the dark, and ultimately he tells them, go ahead and descend without me and bring help back. To which the 2 Sherpas passed Lopsang and noted that Gao was too tired to go on. So Lopsang is prepared to hunker down and spend the night with Scott in the death zone. Gao, who's merely 15 meters away, can hear Lopsang chanting, "Oh Scott, oh Scott," as he's trying to dig out a small area for Scott to rest so he can see all this happening and hear it.
Oh God.
Scott eventually convinces Lopsang to descend and call for help. This left Scott and Gao alone at 27,000 feet. And according to Gao, Scott was completely unaware of his presence.
He didn't know he was there. He didn't know who he was.
Gao testifies that he knew that he was in a precarious situation and very close to death, and he was unlikely to survive, which having that self-awareness that that is going to happen to you is absolutely fucking terrifying.
Oh,
And
yeah.
all the while, he's hearing Scott murmur to himself below while rocking back and forth to keep warm, "I'm sick. I'm sick."
Oh.
So
I feel okay. I have something to share. A lot of times, so with Alzheimer's patients, this does loop back. The people will tell themselves that they are sick when they are in fact dying, which is really unfortunate. They'll believe that they are sick until the very end. Then they'll think that they're going to get better, which is like incredibly upsetting to see or be around or have a family
Yeah.
member who is experiencing that. But I do believe that is what people will experience when their bodies start shutting down. Their first thought is like, oh, I'm sick. Maybe I should go to the bathroom. Or, oh, I'm sick. I'm not feeling well. But what they don't know is that it's their body giving out on them slowly, which is
Yeah.
really unfortunate and probably very chaotic.
Very chaotic, very scary, and obviously disorienting, to say the least. So,
Which, like, if you believe in manifestation, that should not be your thought. You should be like, I am well.
I am
getting better.
okay.
No, I'm
I'm
kidding.
going to be fine.
I am okay. I'm fine. There's a blizzard outside. I'm just gonna rock harder.
So, Gao is shivering and cold, and eventually he fell into a delirious sleep. When he awoke, his face was covered with a thick, icy mask, and his nostrils were plugged with chunks of ice, and his hands and feet had gone completely numb. Now, he begins to struggle to stay awake, fighting for consciousness, and knowing sleep at this point would mean certain death. And he's coming up with survival methods as he's laying there rolling from side to side, breathing deeply in an attempt to keep himself awake and warm. Now, Anatoly made several attempts to rescue climbers from the storm, including Scott. But Anatoly found him in a state of being clearly beyond hope. When he came across Scott, he was partially undressed, which is, as we know, a sign of paradoxical undressing. And this occurs in the final stages of hypothermia, indicating Scott's body is shutting down. Now, Anatoly recalls how Scott's oxygen mask was around his face and the bottle was empty. He discarded his mittens, leaving his hands completely bare to the elements, and his down suit was unzipped and pulled off of one shoulder, along with one arm being outside of its clothing. Anatoly knew at this point there was nothing more that he could do. Scott is dead. Before he left to focus on saving others who were still alive, though, Anatoly moved Scott's body away from the main climbing route and covered his face and his upper body. Now, as the storm got worse, climbers are beginning to become separated from their groups and are becoming lost on the South Col. Now, while people are heading up to help others still on Everest's face, Beck is laying in the snow, sinking deeper into a hypothermic coma. Yasuko at this point is believed to have already passed due to exposure. During the night, a Russian guide rescued the rest of his team, but upon finding Beck, deemed him beyond help, and as custom on the mountain, people that die are left where they fell. The next morning, after the storm had passed, a Canadian doctor was sent up to retrieve Beck and Yasuko. After peeling off a sheet of ice from Yasuko's body, it was decided that she was beyond saving. And when he saw Beck, he was inclined to do the same. Beck's face was crusted with ice, jacket open to the waist, and several limbs were stiff cold. And the doctor described him as being close to death, but still breathing. Not one, but two rescuers looked at Beck and decided that he was too far gone to be saved and would simply become another one of Everest's many casualties.
Oh, that poor man was just freezing slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God. I mean, he probably wouldn't have been able to keep his arms. I mean, sci-fi is we thaw the Neanderthal with the hairdryer. But this is real life.
And you can't do that.
And that man is, if he's losing his limbs, he can't make it down the mountain without a tourniquet. And there are probably no tourniquets on Everest.
So roughly at 4 p.m., Beck woke up from his hypothermic coma. He recalled how he felt nice, warm, and comfortable with a sense of being in his bed, to only open his eyes and realize how wrong he was. When he started to check his limbs, he remembers them sounding almost kind of like wood with how frozen they are. As Beck's laying there, like realizing he's slowly freezing to death, this man gets up and starts heading down to Camp 4. So he's on his way down, and to everybody's shock, he walks in to Camp 4. So he made it down to at least a safer location. At almost 5 a.m., what I presume is the same morning, Base Camp received the first word from Rob. Andy had reached him, but was now missing, and Doug was dead. The specifics behind Doug's demise are unknown, but it's likely that he lost his balance and fell 7,000 feet to his death. Andy is believed to have suffered a similar fate as he tried to descend from the slope to get more help. Rob still had oxygen at this time, but his mask's regulator had frozen and was unable to circulate air. At around 9 a.m., he managed to fix it, but he knew he wouldn't be able to make it down the mountain as his hands and feet were frostbitten. Rob asked the base camp to call his wife, who was at home, pregnant with their daughter. He wanted to get a message to her in his final moments. Sleep well, my sweetheart. Please don't worry so much. Presumably, a few hours later, he passed away due to exposure. Now, as sunlight began to shine through the mountains and bathe Gao as he fell asleep, he's awoken abruptly by 3 Sherpas with oxygen and hot tea, hoping to revive him. Despite the extreme frostbite to his hands, feet, and face, Gao was tied to a rope and led by his lead Sherpa miraculously down to Camp 4. However, his fight was far from over. Alongside of him, Beck, who had spent the majority of the night out in the open, but closer to Camp 4, is in this area also fighting for his life now. Now, a rescue is being mounted for these two, and Todd Burleson and Pete Athens, who had climbed up from the lower camps, have abandoned their summit attempt to try to save Gao and Beck.
Good for them.
Assisting them from what I can understand with getting all the way back down to Camp 2.
That would be, I think, the challenge. Carrying a whole human weight behind you.
Oh, yeah.
And
Down
supplying them with
fucking
oxygen.
Everest. down
That's
fucking
wild.
Everest.
I'm proud of them for even attempting it. I don't care if the other two
Oh
survive.
yeah.
I mean, I do, but
I'm proud of them
that's
for doing that. That's something that you fucking brag about at a party. Not the fucking, oh, I summited Mount Everest. I fucking saved 2 people on Mount Everest.
that's fucking wild. I I've thought about it and how much effort it would take to actually get someone out
Mm-hmm.
of a situation like that. It would suck.
Oh, it would
There's
be
no other way to put it.
horrible. It would
So much
horrible.
worse.
So much effort and energy just to get somebody to safety in those conditions. It's
Plus your
unimaginable to me.
supplies. Plus whatever it would take from you to use your dwindling supplies, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
You have less oxygen now.
Yeah,
What you gonna do about that? You take smaller breaths and you walk. That's fucking crazy. You can't just breathe normally now. You have to walk with a body.
exactly.
It's wild. I'm proud of them.
So, in what became the highest helicopter rescue in the history of Mount Everest, Colonial Madan KC from the Nepal Army Air Force put his life on the line to land a helicopter at 19,800 feet. And he succeeded, airlifting Beck and the near comatose Gao off Mount Everest.
That's crazy. That is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Did they survive? That's what I want to know. You've been withholding this information.
Beck had his right arm amputated, along with his fingers on his left hand and his nose, along with several pieces from his feet.
Oh god.
Doctors,
He's alive though.
doctors were able, however, to construct and fashion him a new nose from skin from his neck and ear, so with grafting. Although he did come back from a near-death experience a little less physically whole than when he started, Beck claims that spiritually, he's never been more put together. Beck went on to, like I said, write the book Left for Dead, My Journey Home from Everest, and states that his near-death experience was actually what saved his deteriorating marriage when he had left for Mount Everest. So
Good for him.
I'm like,
He's down
props,
an arm
dude.
and some fingers, but he's a better person.
He's a better person for it. I'm like, you know what? You go
I
too,
fucking
man. Congratulations.
I oh, I bet he's a better person after that all of that. Oh
Oh
my
my
god.
god. Gal
How
on the
could that not make you a better person?
I'm like, I don't think I could be an angry person after that. I really couldn't because it's like
No.
you just came back from something no one does, like ever.
So,
It's
oh,
so
someone
fucking
could
rare.
scream at you,
Yeah.
and you'd just be like, "Ain't as worse as losing my arm and my fingers." Like,
And
what you
like
want
being
to try?
left behind multiple times on the side of a mountain because I was deemed too far gone. Like I couldn't be
That's
angry after
insane.
that.
No, and he's still alive.
Yeah, he is. And from what I
Wow.
saw, he does conferences and like speeches to crowds that are interested in his story or interested in going to Mount Everest, of being like, this is what you're up against, and this is a very, very real possibility.
That is phenomenal. Okay, so the whole time you've been telling this story, I've been thinking about the possibility of actually ascending this and like what are the more obscure things because we covered like the different sides and how dangerous the different sides are to ascend,
Mm-hmm.
but we've never, at least maybe we have, but we've already, I don't know what I'm saying. You can maybe edit that out. But we maybe haven't talked about like the absolute whiplash you might get from this mountain or being like you're fine going up, but then descending, maybe it just takes a little bit more time and then that ruins it for everyone.
Yeah.
It's such a small thing that can happen that no one has planned for and everyone ends up paying for it, and it's so unfortunate because all of these people are just so determined.
Yes, they're absolutely beyond determined. They have more determination than I could ever imagine to have with climbing. I'm sorry. I'm like, I climb a little rock nowadays. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm done.
No, oh my god, no.
So, Gao, on the other hand, spent over 10 months in the hospital. He lost his arms just above the elbow, feet, and his nose, which has since been reconstructed using tissue from his arms. Although Gao's mobility is severely limited, he is alive and his spirit has returned. So he's doing well after this, which is good to know.
Good.
Now that we're done with the South Col, we're going to go ahead and switch over to the Indo-Tibetan Border Police Group, which took the Northeast Ridge route. However, half of the climbing team perished on the mountain.
No.
So, unfortunately, the details regarding the summit are a little questionable, to say the least, in some areas. And obviously, it's a very similar story to the South Col route. But the Indo-Tibetan police group was making their final push for the summit on May 10th. And unfortunately, on their way back, became separated, with half the group going missing in the descent. Many perished due to the alleged Fukuoka party abandoning the dying individuals and failing to provide help. So this allegation starts to come forward, controversy starts to spike. It was also stated in an article from the Financial Times of London that they also supported the allegations made by the Indian members against the Fukuoka party. Now, this came as a shock to the Fukuoka party, as they had maintained good regulations with the Indian party that was going up along with them. And admittedly, they stated they did nothing wrong. And eventually, the Indo-Tibetan Border Police did accept the Fukuoka party's statement that they had neither abandoned nor refused to help the Indian team, and that it was an acknowledgement, confirmed and reconfirmed in a press conference, that the communication between these teams was difficult as radios were shut off, storm was incoming, so you don't have a clear signal. So it's a lack of communication between the two parties to be able to help each other. Now, it's theorized that around 3:45 p.m., the Indo-Tibetan Border Police had reached the summit. Another part of it had to turn back due to frostbite setting in. After this, there was no radio contact, and none of the three members who went up managed to come back down to high camp. Additionally, the Japanese team denied having any encounter with the Indo-Tibetan team on their way up or down from the summit. So it's like they're not even sure if they took the right route up or not, or if they got lost.
They're just completely separated.
So it is believed that Teswing Smen La, Dorhi Morup, and Teswing Paljor have all perished as a result to exposure to the elements somewhere above 8,600 meters on the Northeast Ridge. And following this, I think it was actually listed as a couple weeks later, if not less than that, as though napping, there's a climber laying on his side under a protective shadow of an overhanging rock. His red fleece is up and around his face, hiding it from view, and his arms are firmly wrapped around his torso, attempting to ward off the biting cold and wind. The climber's legs are stretched out onto the path, forcing passersby to step over his neon green climbing boots.
Green boots.
Green boots.
Green boots. Oh, that poor man.
In May of 1996, the first recorded video footage of green boots was filmed by British filmmaker and climber Matt Dickinson in May of 1986. So this is after the events of May 10th, and they're making their summit attempt for basically the end of the season. The film's narration describes the individual as an unidentified climber from India. He was laying in a limestone cave with his oxygen cylinder at his feet, empty. Over time, the corpse began to become known as a landmark on the North Ridge route, since his body is right next to the trail on the way to the summit. For nearly 20 years, this is how the body stayed, serving as a grim reminder to those seeking to conquer the world's highest mountain from the North Col route. His name, though, is theorized to be Teswing Paljor. Although most people only know him as Green Boots. According to survivors from his group that had turned back prior to the final push to the summit, the 3 members of the Indo-Tibetan Border Patrol group that had become spurred on by something called summit fever, in which case people disregard their own safety in the desire to reach the peak, had overtaken the other 3 members. Now, when you do look up Green Boots on Google, if you do, you're likely to come up with Teshwang Paljor's name as well as Dorji Morup. And it's still debated by some who this actually is, although it is theorized that is Teshwang Paljor. Today, he has been ceremonially hidden from view by Ian Woodall, who, from what I could find along with my research, was also on the mountain that fateful day of 1996. As far as the other members of his team, it's theorized that they also perished from exposure, but the location of the remains has not been disclosed to the public or have not been located. And that is the victims of the 1996 Mount Everest disaster. Now, I like to try to get as much information about a victim as I can to put humanity back to their name. So we're going to go through some of these people's personalities and a little bit of background, at least as much as I can. Robert Hall, or Rob, was the guide and owner of Adventure Consultants. He was born and raised in New Zealand and naturally got into climbing through the exploration of the Southern Alps that span the country of New Zealand. In 1988, Rob met Gary Ball, and the two became quick friends and eventually took on the 7 summits together. Eventually, in 1992, the two co-founded Adventure Consultants. Unfortunately, Gary suffered a cerebral edema and died while climbing in the Himalayas. Rob was forced to bury his friend in a crevasse on the mountainside. Rob eventually met his wife through climbing, and she often accompanied him on his trips. But during the 1996 Everest season, she was pregnant and expecting their daughter in, from what I can remember, June. According to fellow climbers and survivors, Rob was a very dry, laconic, sense of humor type of guy. When you'd first meet him, he was all business and organization. Oftentimes, he'd tell jokes with a completely straight face and then laugh harder than anyone else. Not because of how he told the joke, but because he loved the story behind it. Although he valued organization when it came to being prepared, he also loved to have a laugh, cut loose, have a beer, and chill out with everyone when everything was said and done. Andrew Harold Harris, or Andy Harris, was a guide with Adventure Consultants. Andy was a student at Francis Douglas Memorial College in New Plymouth, New Zealand, and he worked as a ski and Alps guide in the winter months. And then in the summer, from what I could understand, he also worked for an archaeological team conducting research in Antarctica, which he led the program from 1987 to 1992. From what I can understand and find, there's actually a peak named after him in Antarctica, and it's called Harris Peak, and it stands roughly at 1,750 meters. Additionally, Andy and his girlfriend, Fiona McPherson, who was a physician, were also currently working on a medical treatment for altitude sickness in 1994. Andy was described as a fun-loving and strong guy. He was making his first attempt on Everest summit in 1996. Although he lacked the Himalayan experience, he was still regarded by his team as the sort of guy that would make anyone and everyone around him feel like they were in good hands. Andy was posthumously awarded New Zealand's highest bravery honor, the Bravery Star, for his efforts to try to save Doug and Rob on Mount Everest that day. Yasuko Namba was a client with Adventure Consultants. Yasuko was born in Ota City, Tokyo, Japan in 1949 and was a seasoned Japanese climber. And she is the second Japanese woman after Junko Tabai to climb the 7 summits, which are the highest mountains across the 7 countries. Yasuko was described as a little lady, but full of determination, as full as one could be. She was quiet and reserved, but very proper and enjoyable to be around. Doug Hansen was a client with Adventure Consultants. He was born in 1949 in Seattle, Washington, and he grew up in poverty, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. He was a mail worker as well as a driver. Although he was working to make ends meet, it did not deter him from aspiring to climb Mount Everest. Mount Rainier, which is 59 miles southwest of Seattle, may have been part of the influence Doug had when deciding to climb Everest. The year prior to the 1996 incident, Doug was forced to turn back just short of Everest Peak due to increasing exhaustion and frostbite on his feet. Doug was noted as being a very likable person, easygoing. He was tall, fit, lean, and lanky. Moreover, though, he was the type of person who was really easygoing and always thinking about those around him. Teshwang Paljor was the head constable of the Indo-Tibetan Border Patrol. Unfortunately, his fellow climbers, Dorhi Morup and Teshwang Smenla, are hard to find details on and don't really have as much coverage as he does. However, I was able to find a little bit on Paljor. So Teshwang Paljor was 28 years old when he passed on Everest. He grew up in the village of Sakati, which lies at the foot of the Himalayan mountain range. He was thrilled to be selected as part of the exclusive team that hoped to see the first Indians reaching the top of Everest summit from the north side. He had the physical strength and enthusiasm to make it to the summit. However, was completely unprepared for the perils that would unfold the day on the mountain. Paljor was described as a standard, quiet middle child. However, he was the eldest boy, and without a doubt, he felt the pressure to provide for his family. After 10th grade, he quit school and tried out for the Indo-Tibetan Border Police, and he made the cut. When Paljor was selected to join the team on Everest's expedition, his mother implored him not to go. But she states that he must have thought the benefit for his family drove him to climb Everest on that fateful day in May. Scott Fisher was the guide of Mountain Madness. Scott grew up in Michigan as well as New Jersey. His relationship with climbing started with a documentary film he watched with his father in 1970 about a national outdoor leadership school. After that, he went to Wind River Range in Wyoming and never looked back. In 1984, he co-founded Mountain Madness and began to guide people up into the mountains in the Himalayas. Scott often climbed not only for himself, but for others as well, raising money as well as awareness for causes like AIDS and the CARE organization. Scott was described by other survivors as an incredibly magnetic person with sarcastic humor you can't even begin to imagine. He had a larger-than-life personality that an individual would be lucky to meet in their lifetime. Overall, though, he was a very thoughtful and warm guy. Now, Sherpas have noted that most of the fatalities on Everest belong to clientele who refuse to turn around, driven on by summit fever with no regards for their own safety and possibly safety of others. The 1996 Everest disaster would eventually go on to be published into a book in 1997 called Into Thin Air by John Cracker, who was one of the survivors of the 1986 incident. In 1987 as well, Antonio Bucrive, which I'm pretty sure I just pronounced differently than I did the first time, but unfortunately it's not my first language, Anatoly would publish his own book called The Climb. However, Anatoly would also perish in an avalanche that year on Annapurna in Nepal. The depiction in Anatoly's book remains to this day one of the biggest differences between fact and fiction to some for what happened during the 1986 tragedy. So there's a lot of controversy on the accuracies depicted in that book. Now, the book Into Thin Air would eventually be adapted into the 2015 movie Everest, which depicted the story of the Mountain Madness and Adventure Consultants team expeditions to the peak that year. I'm going to leave us off with a quote from Scott that he liked to use with basically anyone who asked why he was doing what he was doing. Because similar to George Mallory, he had the attitude of it's there, why not? So his quote is, life is life. You can go through it cruising or you can go through it bumming. It's your choice. But anyways, Sarah, how do you feel about your last expedition on Everest? Or at least for
It
right now.
was for right now. It was as devastating. I should say it was more devastating than I thought it would be. The turn back in time doesn't necessarily help.
Mm-hmm.
It's still so unfortunate, and seeing as all these people thought, I'm gonna have a good day, we're gonna climb Mount Everest, only to be met with nature.
Complete
And just
disaster.
nature. Yep.
Yep.
The worst case scenario on their little route up to Everest. I bet you for every one person who's died on Everest, there have been so many that have made it up alive and back down,
Oh,
and they
yeah,
just happened to
definitely.
hit the unfortunate conditions
Oh, yeah.
that took them out. And it's so, I don't know, difficult to kind of hear about through their encounters, especially for the
Mm-hmm.
survivors.
Because a lot of this comes from Beck's interviews and his writings, and of course, the book Into Thin Air of what exactly was kind of going on that day and their first person perspectives and recounting of the events.
I believe Beck fully and completely. Nothing that he said would ever hint to me being as untrue, at least through the way that you have told it to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that he misexperienced anything or he's trying to be a victim of circumstance. I think he truly experienced all of what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And I think it would be truly devastating to experience, and it would be insane to write about afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine having friends better off than you in a situation not surviving. Like,
Yeah, no, I'd be pretty
that's
beside
a horrid
myself.
feeling.
And like
I'd be
obviously
pissed.
this isn't like a one day trek up the mountain. It's weeks on end that you're with these people and you're getting to
Yeah.
know them
Oh,
and you're
yeah.
becoming friends with them and then all of a sudden they're just gone.
It's totally different when you're in that situation, too. Like, you're trauma bonded, but in, like, a
Mhm.
totally different way.
Completely different way.
Oh, yeah. You've had to survive. These are your people at this point.
Mhm.
I can't imagine the devastation that he felt coming off the mountain.
The
I don't
devastation
think I
and
could
the
even
relief as well because it's like I'm safe. I'm going to be okay. But it's like so many other people are not.
the survivor's guilt.
Mhm. I can't imagine
That
the
is a real
survivor's guilt.
thing.
It is a real thing. It's a
No.
very, very real
Oh,
thing.
that's something that probably wakes him up at night,
I would
unfortunately.
imagine so.
That poor man. I'm happy he made it out alive, all things considered, but it's truly devastating to lose all of your climbing partners. I don't know if I'd ever want to make the trek up Mount Everest, especially after learning all of this and the oxygen tanks and even just thinking about doing more than like a 4 mile hike nowadays, I'm like, no.
It's that's too much. I'm like
More than 4 miles, maybe 4 miles in, and then I rest for an hour and come back.
I'm looking forward to like going tracing through the woods in winter because that's the best time to go because A, all the bugs have gone back to hell where they fucking belong and there's no
Yay!
ticks. So it's like I can
Yay!
go explore the woods without fear of like losing any more of my red blood cells than I fucking don't already have. And I'm thinking about that. I'm like, I know damn good and well when I get down to the base and start hiking up the other side, my poor legs are going to be so fucking tired and I'm going to be tired. And it's like, you have to make those considerations of do I have the energy to go up this way and then come back and go back up the other way? And it's like taking that
Yes.
into consideration is just such a it's a little bit of a letdown at times because it's like, yeah, I want to go see what's over there, but at the same time, I don't want to be stuck out here. So I have to make that
So,
decision.
yes, I take people on what I call a beginner's hike. And so there's this one hike I like to go on up near Lyons. It's like a little bit past in between like Lyons and Estes. If you can find it, it's great. But 2 miles in, which is the perfect amount of time to take a new person,
Mm-hmm.
there is an abandoned cabin. And 2 miles back out, that's 4 miles. That's more than enough for like a beginner hiker, I think, to really get the
Yeah.
feel of what's actually going on. Yeah, because you get in, you get to see a cool thing, and then you get out. If someone's newer, that cabin exists kind of just before you hit the valley,
Mm-hmm.
and so you don't want to hit any of that. But for people who are less experienced, for people who don't hike, um, that 2 miles is hell.
Oh, definitely. I
Yeah.
can only imagine,
And
considering
getting
I don't hike very often. I wish I did. I don't very often, but it's like going down and it's like 2 miles down and up. And it's like, I can't do the steep bridge anymore. My knees just won't handle it.
it's not a bad trail, but it's not for the faint of heart.
Mm-mm.
And the only time I go hiking is during the winter. So I've got the crampons, I've got the snowshoes, whatever I have available at the time. And just watching people try and get through that, and then also getting to that myself. I know how tired I
Oh,
am.
yeah.
2 miles in. I'm ready to eat a snack. I'm ready to start a fire.
And go to bed.
I don't care what happens 2 miles in. And to go up a whole mountain like Mount Everest.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do it. I like to think that
Oh,
maybe I could make it through the Khumbu ice fall if I was like in top physical shape, but mentally, I don't think I could put myself into that position of like pushing myself forward on that trip.
you'd have to be a crazy person, I think.
Or somebody that is super duper like endurance charged and headstrong because it takes mental energy to get up that motherfucker.
Oh, yeah, if you've spent your life planning to climb this mountain, go for it. Go
Mhm.
for it, but don't expect to come back, apparently. Because apparently, what was it? The lady who couldn't finish, was it Kilimanjaro? Yeah, she didn't necessarily make it back. It's incredibly insane just
Yeah.
how much these people have gone through and then how much they lose.
There's other mountains out there too that are just as dangerous. Like Kilimanjaro, for instance, has a lot of death on it as well. K2 is considered to be the most dangerous mountain in the Himalayas, like ahead of Everest, because people die on it all the time.
It happens.
Hmm.
It just happens, especially when you're up at that altitude. You're physically not supposed to be able to survive up there. That's not a diss on people. That's just a biological fact. If you want to survive in the unsurvivable, that's where you go. I think there's no other place except for the ocean.
Yeah.
But even then, that would be crazy.
Well, it's like there are certain areas that I strongly believe humans are not supposed to go. Top of Mount Everest is one. The bottom of the ocean
Hmm.
scuba diving is two.
I don't think you'd make it, even if you go with a submarine. Depending on where you think the bottom is, depending on where you're trying to go, you're not
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be there.
You're not supposed to be there, man.
If we were supposed to be there, we were supposed to be able to swim there and climb there without any other extra
Supplemental.
equipment. And the
Yeah.
fact, yes, supplemental oxygen. Um, Not a diss on the people that decide to go there,
No, no.
but just a thought.
That
We're not
maybe we're
supposed to
not
be there.
supposed to be there.
It's supposed to reinforce the idea that we're not supposed to be there, but of course we will be there
Yeah.
because we're crazy.
And props to anyone that has climbed Everest because hell to the no. Nope, nope, nope.
Oh
I'm
my
good.
gosh. I hope everyone from here on out is so sensible and has such a good idea of when to climb to not, and they're so headstrong that when faced with adversity they say no.
Yeah, exactly. They're just like, nah,
There might be a whiteout. I don't think I'm going.
I think I'm staying here. Might try again tomorrow. We'll see how it goes.
I'll share my tent, bring in 2 more people, but I'm not going today.
I'm not going today. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe
Oh
next
god.
week,
Or
but not
even, oh
today.
god, poor Beck just waiting for his friends when he
I
thought, maybe I'll go back down.
know.
The way that they set those climbs up, he probably could have made it down with little vision before the whiteout,
Mm-hmm.
but after the whiteout, that was
Well, it's like,
that was certain death, and then he survived that, so good for him.
good for him. I completely understand why he waited, though. He gave Rob his word, and he's fully expecting Rob to come back down. And then suddenly, Rob doesn't come back down.
Poor Rob.
Yeah,
Rob tried his hardest.
he did. He really did try his hardest to save Doug,
Oh, fuck.
and it cost him deeply.
It would be so difficult, I think, to be put in that situation emotionally.
Mm-hmm. If you
I
guys,
know we've been there before, but
yeah, if you guys haven't watched the 2015 Everest movie, obviously there's some Hollywood additives to it, but it is really, really good.
plus it's spooky
It
season.
is spooky season, so go to God Bless, because yesterday was Halloween, I guess. This might actually pop up on Halloween. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing yet. I'm gonna try to.
It's still spooky season.
It's still
It's still
spooky
spooky
season.
season until Thanksgiving.
Exactly. Thank you again for listening to Spattered. Please make sure to follow the show on Facebook and Instagram at Spattered Podcast and on X at Spattered Pod. If you're enjoying the show, make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts from. If you're watching on YouTube, like this video, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to be notified when the show goes live or drops a video. As always, if you have a case request, any questions, or are interested in sponsoring the show, please email me at spatteredpodcast@gmail.com. Spattered is a true crime podcast hosted by Caitlin Gardner and Sarah Ray. The research and edits for this episode were done by Caitlin Gardner. All the music for the show was done by Lucio Cardenas. We'll see you next time. Stay safe out there. And remember, the truth is always in the blood.